Good day, everyone. Welcome to Maryvale. We're in our profile tank room here today, so it's appropriate that we're having some library vintages of profile. We have the 09, 10, 11, and 12. It's a bottle each. That's the offer, $8.99, excuse me, with 2-day shipping included. So it's a great deal, but profile, as some of you may know, it's always our best foot forward, our best wine, our Grand Vin, as we say. From our estate vineyard, our beautiful estate vineyard in Conn Valley, which is about 15 minutes here from the winery on the east side at about 600 to 900 feet elevation. So yeah, those are the wines we're tasting today, and just as a reminder, our wines age extremely well, and Andrew and I will discuss those wines here today. So maybe we'll jump in with, what do we think, 09 first?
Start with the 09?
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah. Just a little bit about what Rene was talking about with our vineyard. We have 25 acres planted on 18 different blocks with elevation change, different orientations, exposures, rootstock, clonal selections. So every year what we're doing with Profile is trying to highlight the best lots of that vintage. And we taste them blind and we blend them blind. So from the same vineyard, spectacular vineyard in Conn Valley, as Rene mentioned, but just different expressions year to year, honoring the vintage and trusting that the vineyard is going to give us everything that we need.
Yeah, basically the cream of the crop every year from those 18 different blocks that we have. And I think over the years, maybe every single block at some point has made it into Profile, because we typically make 2 wines from that property. We make obviously the Profile, and then we also make the St. Helena Cab, a bit different style. But over the last few years, as the vineyard matures, we tend to have 4 or 5 different blocks that tend to be the core, and then some years you have one other block, some year another block. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say. We typically have those kind of the B, D, E, G, F, G is like the kind of the spine. If we were looking at a musical scale, it would almost kind of correspond to that.
I love
too.
that.
So yeah, there's a backbone that's kind of historical in the vineyard, and we'll taste that here. I think that the thing we'll find is interesting going through a library selection and profile, and those of you who get this awesome offer will find this as well, is that while the vintage may vary the wine, at the same time, that backbone, that kind of kind of like the structure, that spirit is still through every single one of these wines because of that kind of those blocks are always kind of in here. So we'll see variations on the theme if you were, but to go back to Rene's initial point, 2009 was a really nice growing year. It was a little bit earlier, a little bit cooler. You started to see a little bit cooler in the valley than maybe
it's pretty mild,
normal.
I think, but a little bit on the earlier side, the ripening. But I mean, the wine is now 12, 13 years old, so it's in a beautiful, beautiful place.
I love that wine. So one of the things that makes, to me, where we are in the valley so spectacular is that Conn Valley exhibits these notes of savory dark fruits, herb de Provence as well, under forest floor. It's the fruit of a Cabernet, but at the same time, it's the earthiness and the complexity of the age of this. And so I really find, to your point earlier, our wines age beautifully. This 09 is in a great spot right now. I still feel the acid. There's great tension in the wine, but at the same time, you have those tertiary notes of the underforest, the herb de Provence, but at the same time, that core is savory, but at the same time, like pleasantly sweet too. At the same,
I still get some fruit because it's in that window. If you talk about 30 years, then most of the fruit would be gone. But here we're in the 15-year range, and they're big wines. Keep that in mind. So a little bit of age, like we have here in front of us for all of those, is actually an extra benefit. But 09, unbelievable. You can drink this. I mean, you can have another sip, right? Because there's still some nice acidity in the wine as well, and tension. So let's move on to the 2010, which was a cooler year from my memory, and we had some extended hang time in the vineyards. So maybe some also fantastic complexity. Obviously dense color, very good concentration. Maybe we got the ripeness level also at a little bit lower alcohol. I mean, we were still in a warm climate here, obviously, but was a bit more of a, slightly more European year because it was, we picked it at lower, maybe a little bit at lower sugar levels
Sure.
for the same amount of ripeness.
Just to echo that, to me, 2010's always been more of an Italian, Northern Italian type of vintage, Piedmontese, if you will. And to Renee's point of longer growing season, lower alcohol, lower sugar levels, but more hang time.
Yep.
So I get kind of that Northern Italian style. And to me, like those wines are showing the best, the Northern Italian wines after 10 years. And analogous to our wine here, I think 10, 12, or 11, 12 years right now, the 2010. To me, it's got a darker, denser fruit core than the 9.
Yeah, yeah. Concentration
more
is,
concentration.
Unbelievable.
Maybe not the same kind of tertiary, like French finesse of the 9, but the 10 is like, it's still so powerful for being, that old, which is I think phenomenal. It's going to age. It's going to age even more beautifully, and it's ready to go right now too. Great wine, fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, really good.
I wouldn't have thought Northern Italian, but you said it. I mean, everybody gets. But I think this wine is just in an extremely beautiful spot right now. So we'll go with the next vintage here, which is the 2011, which I know was a more challenging year to me. If I look at the last 20 years, maybe not 2020 because we had the fires, but other than that, was a more challenging year. However, we took some pretty draconian measures in the vineyard. We had a more difficult fruit set, so started with a bit lower yield, and then we had some more challenging weather, let's put it this way, during harvest. So we did some green harvesting, more so than we would normally do. So we ended up with a ton of acres. So I think the end result, because of the severe selection in the vineyard, we made still, I think, a beautiful wine. You compare it, you told me before, I know this, but a little bit more to a Bordeaux vintage.
Yeah, so for me, in a wetter year in Napa, a wet year in Napa is a dry year in Bordeaux. I mean, let's just talk about that for a second. So, yes, for us, it's draconian measures in the vineyard, but necessary to maintain the standard of quality, I think, across the board. Given that, though, I will say it's not going to be as dense as, say, the 2010, but at the same time, to me, it's more first growth Bordeaux. I mean, in that sense, in that the quality level is still super high. Mm-hmm. You don't have the same characteristic of fruit, but at the same time, the expression of fruit is undeniable there. It's just more kind of like classic old world style fruit. At the same time, it's long, it's elegant, it's got great acid. It's not what we typically think when we think of like traditional like Napa Cab fruit bomb, but like it's a spectacular wine.
Very pretty wine, very elegant.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. If you like fine French wines, this wine is bulletproof.
Yeah. So that's part of the pack. Last but not least, 2012, which some of you that have tuned in before, and we've probably had this wine in a previous occasion as well. But it's a very sexy, consumer-friendly vintage, very approachable. It's got 10 years now. It's still a lot of fruit. The tannins are fine-tuned. The growing season was also a very good growing season.
It was pretty much perfect, I have to say. So in the last 10 to 15 years, the 2012 is considered to be one of the Napa classic, old school classic vintages where, if you look at when we talk about like a 30-year average, like what does that mean? Like the 2012 vintage was pretty much the average. Like it is the classic quintessential Napa vintage. So sexy tannin, full body, but not too powerful. It's got great fruit, but not overly simplistically fruity and monolithic. It's got complexity, it's got terroir, it's got balance, it's got depth and length. It's a super sexy wine, not to steal the term, but it's one of my favorites, and I think it will be for a long time.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Before we leave you, we have an event coming up in a few months, April 24th. We'll go through a decade of profile tasting. We're lucky enough to have our friend, a Napa-born master sommelier, Sir Lucero, who's going to join and kind of walk us through the profile and the different decades and how Cabernet, how high-end Napa Cab evolves. So make sure you book your spot for that. It's going to be very limited. That's, again, on April 24th. So coming up, I know time flies, so it seems like far away, but it's coming up pretty quickly. And that tasting will be followed by a lunch as well. And I'll be there. Maybe you'll be there. I don't know. We'll figure this out. But make sure you join us for this one for limited seating for this tasting, which will be held at Maryvale. So that's it. 4 bottles. Don't be afraid to double or triple or quadruple up on the offer. Great wines, beautiful spot, all different, which is the way we like it.
The wines are so good and the offer is so good. You'd be a fool not to. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers.